o'clock here at TCT in San Francisco. That's TCT 2015. And I have talked about, and we've talked about in these interviews, various Absorb trials. And now finally we have come to the real Absorb trial, Absorb 3. With me is Dean Kariakis. And Dean was the principal investigator of Absorb 3. So Dean, I guess the first thing I should ask is, how is this trial really different, and what is this trial going to do for us that the others may not?
Yeah, well, I'll start. Steve Ellis and I were co-principal investigators, and this is the pivotal trial for US FDA approval of this bioabsorbable platform. This is a classic non-inferiority, powered for non-inferiority at 1 year for target lesion failure, randomized 2-to-1, the Absorb bioabsorbable vascular scaffold versus Xience, which of course is best in class as a DES comparator. So it was a high bar. And this device, the BVS, came in non-inferior for target lesion failure at 1 year. It performed, I think, extremely well when you look at it being a first-gen device. And as you know, being an interventionist, the very first exposure of most of the interventionists in this trial to putting this device in, their very first deployment was in a patient enrolled in the trial. So they had never had any experience with this device before.
Yeah, it's an interesting trial, Dean, and this device is sort of bulky, a little bit more difficult to place, a little bit more difficult to move around, and yet at the end of the day, people who didn't have a lot of experience ended up putting it in and having results that were non-inferior. Now, let's talk a little bit about non-inferiority in this setting, because the obvious question is, so what?
Well, you know, I think it is so what, meaning it's something, because you came in non-inferior to the best-in-class current DES to 1 year, and this device, BVS, has been specifically designed to improve outcomes beyond 1 year. I mean, the fact that it comes in non-inferior to the best-in-class currently available DES, I think is remarkable and sets the stage for the superiority analysis, which Greg Stone is a PI for, and Steve and I are co-PIs. That goes landmark 1 to 5 years to see TLF versus Xience. You know, a platform that goes away is less likely to have fracture, neoatherosclerosis, lack of healing, all the things that contribute to the inexorable rate of target lesion failure events that follow beyond 1 year, and all the best DES currently available. We can't get away from this, except maybe BVS will allow us to do that, and I think that's the hope.
Well, the hope is, in fact, as you point out. So let's see what happens with long-term. You mentioned to me before we started all this that there will be some merging of trials to get some really large numbers for long-term follow-up.
We had 2,008 patients in A3, Absorb 3, and there'll be 3,000 more patients added as part of Absorb 4, so that we now have 5,000 patients, which is the size you need for superiority, followed to 5 years. So these are big numbers, long follow-up. And we should see, in fact, Patrick in late follow-up of Absorb 2 is starting to see a divergence of the curves for TLF, favoring BVS, meaning the device that goes away is less likely to have device-related events over time, and that's the goal.
Perhaps no surprise that they're not going to have device-related events if the device is gone, right?
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. So there you have it. Thank you, Dean. You know, bioabsorbable stents are really, Patrick predicts we're only going to be using those in 10 years. It may well be the truth if the long-term follow-ups hold up, and I certainly hope they do. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you very much.